Welcome to the Garden Talk podcast, where we interview growers from all over the world, both beginners and experts, seeking to learn more about what they know about gardening and how they do things in their garden. What's up, everybody? For those of you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and you're tuned into the Garden Talk podcast. This is episode number 155. In this episode, I interview Skit P. He has been gardening for 10 years and is also a breeder. He talks all about how he does breeding in this episode, everything from the types of breeding he does, what he looks for in male and female plants, how he grows the plants when breeding, and more. If you want to see short clips of these podcast episodes, search Garden Talk Clips on YouTube. I also have a gardening channel where I show the plants that I grow. Both of those channels will be linked down in the YouTube description section below. One of my goals for this podcast is to bring free information about gardening to the general public. That being said, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's episode who helped make that goal possible. Thanks to AC Infinity for sponsoring this episode. Check out their Controller AI Plus, the first controller to use artificial intelligence to run your grow for you. Connect your grow devices to the Controller AI Plus and pair it with the AC Infinity app to gain access to the AI tools that predict, learn, and adapt to patterns and spikes for the most optimal environment. There is a lot more to it, so click the link in the description section below so you can learn more about their Controller AI Plus, and the discount code MrGrowed15 works on both Amazon and their website, acinfinity.com. Stash Blend. Stash Blend consists of several ingredients in one, so you no longer have to buy individual bottles. It includes corn steep liquor, seaweed extract, humic acid, beneficial bacteria, silica, and mycorrhizal fungi. It can be used in addition to your synthetic base nutrients or be used in living soil systems. Simply mix it into water and water your plants with it. You can get it at stashblend.com, link in the description section below, and use the discount code THESTASH. Mars Hydro. Their Black Friday sale is going on right now. You can get up to 25% off, get 5x points, buy more, get more, and they also are doing weekly flash sales. Everything from grow lights, grow tents, grow tent kits, ventilation systems, and more. Go to their website at mars-hydro.com to see all of their deals. I'll link it in the description section below. And you can use discount code MrGrowIt to save even more. And we are back, and I'm joined with Skit P. How you doing today?
Oh, all right. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good, man. Thanks for coming on to the podcast today. Today's going to be a fun talk. We're going to talk all about breeding, and there are so many different ways to breed plants, inbreeding, reversing, backcrossing, the list goes on. So I want to dig in, pick your brain a little bit, find out what you do, your style of breeding, and things that kind of go along with that, how the plants are grown throughout the growth cycle, pheno hunting, all that stuff. But before we get too deep into it, can you give us a little bit introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into gardening?
Oh, well, hey, Skit P, man, I got into gardening. Actually, it started way back as a shorty, really just watching my grandfather work in the garden and whatnot that he had in the backyard. And he grew these crazy tomatoes just all over the place. And, it was kind of inspired, and was always just driven to kind of really, I guess, just produce my own and create my own, as I am a creator, I'm kind of all over the place from a musician, artist, writer, all that stuff. That's my thing.
Nice. And I know you said before we hit the record button, you've been gardening for about 10 years now. How did you get into breeding? Talk to us about how that came about.
So, wow. When it comes to breeding, that was, that was really the starting point for me, when I first wanted to dive into, the cultivation of the medical plants. I wanted to create my own. I wanted the master strain. I was just like, well, this is good, but I know it could be great if we take this and bring it with that and bring it all together, and it's gonna be amazing, right? So that was really the driving force, that got me going, and really just, hey, where's the pollen? Where's the females? Hey, let's make it happen.
And that creativity turned not just into gardening or breeding, but you're also a movie producer, and you put me in your film. So I am officially a movie star. I've got Lionsgate hit me up, Disney hit me up. I'm just kidding. But you do have a movie out. Can you talk about your movie that you got real quick?
Yeah, so the name of the film is Designer. It's based a little bit, off my own experiences and whatnot, with a little bit of embellishment, for entertainment purposes and whatnot. It's really about a guy that's on a journey, to, hey, create the master strain, right? And along this journey, it's a bit of different events, and yeah, we got you in it, Mr. Grow It, which was amazing. We was able to make that happen. Been a long time viewer of your content, and it's really actually helped me in my own personal journey of things. Just from where we're at, where I was and where I'm at now. So yeah.
That was awesome, man. Yeah, I was so stoked when you hit me up and you're like, be in my movie. I'm like, movie? Whoa, that's so cool. And then what you told me about like the actual story of it, and now it's on Tubi, so people can watch it for free on Tubi. Is that right?
It's definitely available on Tubi. And there's also a few other platforms that'll be coming out in the near future. Definitely looking to get it on Prime, but right now, definitely check it out. Tubi. Hey, it's live. Tap in, get the app right now.
Awesome. Congrats on all your success there.
Thank you.
Let's get into breeding. So, like I mentioned, there are so many different types of breeding you can do: inbreeding, reversing, back crossing. What do you do for what's your style of breeding? What do you do?
So forgive me for not having all the formal terms and whatnot, but it really just my initial I guess beginnings with the breeding. It started really with the first one was Midnight Kush, and that was the name of the strain, and then it was just a random seed that I had lying around, and luckily it was a male. And from there I kind of just was crossing it with different ones. I visiting various seed banks and whatnot, and just I was just crossing them, until I got a little bit further on. I became privy, to some of your content and everything. And then I know the pheno hunting, the back crossing, and some of those topics and whatnot. And it was that was when the first time I implemented the back crossing. When I was just looking to try to just kind of hone in on some of the characteristics of pretty much one in particular. But yeah.
Okay, so you're mostly doing kind of the inbreeding side of things. You're taking one from one side, mother, father, crossing that, and then are you working yourself down generation to generation, or are you kind of just sticking with the F1s?
I've really just been sticking with the F1s at this current time, up to the point. So yeah, and I'm currently pheno hunting right now. In this particular stage where I'm at, I've been pretty much just crossing down up to the point. And like I said, once I kind of back cross, because I was running into some issues with it was actually I had some Hermes in there where it was expressing that. So obviously that's going to be a issue for, depending on how you look at things. So we definitely was looking to get that out of there. And the back crossing, it definitely seemed to be the way to get it out. It just with the really just like the one time, and it was for the most part.
Okay, so how did you do that back cross? So you did that initial cross, right? And the offspring of that you planted, you were finding herms, and then would you take one that wasn't a herm and kind of back crossed it to the father? Or how did you do that?
So what ended up happening was my particular cross that I've been working with, it had some Hermy genes in it. So what ended up happening was I kind of got lucky. I had a forbidden fruit, and I got a female and a male. Now, when I got the male, I saved the pollen. I put it in the bag, froze it, so I was able to preserve it. And pretty much over time, what I ended up doing was after the initial cross, I ended up with the forbidden fruit pollen that I had. I ended up crossing that back into the mix, and that next offspring, it appeared that the Hermy, gene that it was expressing previously was pretty much clear.
Okay. Talk to us about your favorite cross that you've ever created. First of all, how many crosses have you done roughly? And what's your favorite one?
I'd have to say up to this point, it was one of the ones I referenced to as Night Cheddar, because after the initial cross of the Midnight Kush with the rando seed that I just had lying around, I ended up crossing it with a blue cheese. And I just remember the terpene profile of it was it was just something very unique. I'll say that, and I wish I actually due to the fact that it was so early on, and I had the seeds for quite some time. I never really, you know, I wish I was more into pheno hunting back in the day. That's all I could say, because I definitely missed that one. By the time I actually thought about it, it was sitting around. I kind of was already jumping down the strain of, I got to cross this one with that one. I still don't have it yet. It ended up, when I tried coming back around like later in the years and whatnot, because I just been holding on to them, the seeds were pretty much, I couldn't get any of them germinate. So it was null and void.
Oh, damn. So on that cross, what was like the flavors and smells and effects that you got out of it?
It just felt like, it was just very like floaty, nothing too crazy where it's going to be like the couch lock effect. But, if you got things to do, it was still, it just was more so like a even kill. It felt like a 50-50. I've never done any, formal testing or whatnot, but just going off of like the overall effects of it, it was a very like balanced kind of effect that you garnered from it. I felt like it was like hints of the cheese, but there was also remnants of the Midnight Kush, which I was very fond of. It was kind of gassy, it was elements of that. It was just a very nice blend from what I could remember.
Okay. Now, are your genetics available to the community, or do you just keep them internal?
No, right now, it's all internal. Last thing I want to do is put out some bad, genetics of any kind or something that'll be cumbersome to, to work with. I really want to, get it to a point where it would be, it would be very advantageous, I would say, for a new beginner, grower to come into it, and or to a connoisseur can also like appreciate it, so it still has some work to be done for sure,
Makes sense. Yeah, it can take so long to get through the process. I mean, I started Chill Out OG. It's the only cross I've actually ever done in 2019. So started and I released to the community in 2023. So it took me kind of several years in order to kind of really confident that what I had was going to be stable enough to where really weren't going to find any herms, or when I say many, I wouldn't say none, because like from my understanding, it's still kind of always within its genetics, no matter what. I know some people will debate that fact, but for the most part, what I was finding in the population, I wasn't really finding any hermaphrodite plants. So got to the point where I was comfortable to actually do the release. But yeah, it takes very, very long time. So you got to have patience for it, I know some people will just pollen chuck and then they'll create seeds and then push it out to the community without testing. That's a separate conversation. But yeah, it seems like you're going about it the right ethical way to where you haven't even released anything yet. You're just kind of working things. So it's good to hear.
Definitely. I think also too, after watching some of the content and listening in on some of the discussions, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get ridiculed. I can't have myself out there like that, so
it's a lot of pressure, you know what I mean? It's like if you release something that's just a bunch of herms. I mean, look what happened to Humboldt Seed Company. They released the Donuts Triploid, and it's like a really, really high percentage of herms. And they got exposed, and it was just not a good thing for them. And I don't think they're selling them anymore. Their listing is still up, but it was a catastrophe. And that's apparently there wasn't enough testing done. Yes, they were just doing it outdoors. Once they got to indoors, that's I guess where a lot of those problems were happening.
Yeah, which that's interesting. That environmental change, can definitely impact a lot of things for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's good that you're patient with things. It's good to hear. Now, when you are doing pheno hunting, right, when you're looking for that male, when you're looking for that female, there are different characteristics that you can look for. Talking about males in particular, what do you typically look for when searching for males to breed with?
So, I mean, the biggest thing is how fast is it growing? How well does it adapt to my environment, right? And also, too, one thing I've implemented as of late, I feel that more so a more mature male plant, at least from my own experience, doing the stem rub, just to see the terpene, because I feel like that adds to the experience. And that's one of the things I feel like when pheno hunting, just in general, is just looking for that terp profile, that, that essence. I feel like that's why, people burn incense, that experience is everything, well, at least a big part of it. Obviously the flavor, but you can't tell that right there from the male, but as far as the male goes, yeah, that's the biggest things, growth factors, how well it thrives in my environment, because that's where I'm going to be growing it predominantly. And yeah, the smell that I'm getting from it, if any.
And then how about female plants? Do you look for kind of the same things? Or are there other characteristics that you look for when searching for female plants to breed with?
So with the females is more so, I'd say like midway through, I'm kind of looking for certain things. Once again, the smell that it's putting out, the flower development, the node separation, all those things. Also, the fan leaf production as of recent, it's been a big thing that I've been experiencing, just with implementing certain strains into the cross. It kind of like, I don't know if it would be a mutation or if it's just an overabundance of that gene or whatever, I can't say, but I know that's huge, because if you don't want to defoliate, 3-4 times throughout the process, maybe 5-6, some of them are just crazy with fan leaf production, and that could be a hindrance for some.
That's interesting. Yeah. So the morphology of the plant, you're looking real deep into that and kind of selecting from there, huh?
Yeah, all those characteristics, for the most part. And, at that point, like midway through, at least it would be, if you're looking to breed and whatnot and have something available, clone it if it looks any what, of something, desired characteristics that I'm seeking. And then from there, obviously the effect that, I would get from it, upon harvest. But which is why it's definitely, you want to clone it, midway through if it's even looking of such. And obviously you got the trichome production and things of that nature, because if you're looking for like extracts and whatnot, I've come across, some interesting, strains out there where I've seen, just looking under the jeweler's loop, the trichome production is very interesting. It's just, some are far more prevalent than others, like I've seen them where they're looking like they're almost like stacked on top of each other. It's pretty wild.
You mentioned midway through you take clones. Are you talking midway through veg period, or are you going into flower and taking clones during the flower stage?
Yeah, meaning the actual flower stage, in regards to the female plant, because I know when we speak on seeking characteristics, for me, as far as a female is concerned, that's when we're going to see like what we're really getting. Granted, structure and whatnot. But, the plant itself can always be manipulated, to the growth space, using various techniques and whatnot. So, that's really not a big thing for me. I'm really seeking the overall effect. And, really, once again, adaptability to the environment, some are far more heavier feeders than others, and whatnot. And then I do like to maybe grow one or two, at least two, different strains throughout. So that way, when I harvest, I could have a different selection and whatnot, because, you could kind of get used to one plant, so it's nice for a change up.
Got it. So you're doing what a lot of people call monster cropping, where you're basically just taking a clone in flower, bringing it back, re-vegging it, and then kind of working with from there. That makes sense. I've been doing that recently, and I've had pasts where I was taking clones within the veg stage, and yeah, I mean, you can argue that it takes a little bit longer to go through the re-veg process, but a lot of people have the time. If you're working the plants and finishing off the flowering stage, you can bring that back, and by the time you finish that harvest, well, it's already re-vegging and you're kind of working on it there. So timing, I think, is kind of important when it comes to on that avenue.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's been times where I've seen a plant and maybe I'll go ahead and, kind of been let down and whatnot, hey, it smells good and everything like that. And it's like, oh, we need this. And then by the time we get to actually experiencing the effects of it, it's very underwhelming. And it was just like, so like you said, very time consuming, when going through the process. I think sometimes I could be overly patient, but hey, yeah, I guess you can't rush perfection.
Right. All right, let's get deeper into the actual growing process when you're breeding. So when you are breeding, are you in soil, cocoa, hydroponics?
Well, soil. It's a bit of a mixture. I know I'll probably get ridiculed for this because I've seen different sides of it, but I'm kind of using, I guess it would be a bit of a three-part. It's already a pre-mixed soil. I just recently added like some cocoa in it, so I kind of like broke it down, and then I have perlite where yeah, I don't know if it would still be defined as soil-less or whatever. I know some people have referenced it, to it as, but that's just my thing. It's just like the three-part. It's very light. Adding the extra cocoa in as well with the perlite. So yeah, but yeah, soil nonetheless. I know I'm getting into specifics and whatnot.
Oh, let's get into specifics. So what was it, like a brand of bagged soil that you mix with the cocoa? And what's the ratio between soil and cocoa and perlite?
So I would just say it's just a three-part, so 1 part soil, 1 part cocoa, and then 1 part perlite. The what is it? I want to say it's Earth's Forest or Earth's Floor or something like that. It's the green bag that I think you could probably find in every garden store that's in your local neighborhood. So yeah.
Okay, so 1 to 1 to 1. And then what do you use for nutrients throughout the growth cycle? And how do you go about those feedings throughout the growth cycle?
Do we have to name, we talking name brands, or are we just talking?
Yeah, if you talk name brands, that'd be helpful because the folks do like to have the details. Now, if you don't want to reveal anything, by all means, you don't have to. But
hey, it's more so because I feel like I'm gonna get lit up in the comments with it. But I use general hydroponics honestly because it's the most cost effective. But I really just use their base veg. For veg, I add the silica. I also supplement the Cal Mag, the micro, and then I also throw some sugars in there. I forget the name of it, but it's pretty much at the end of the day, it's like a cane sugar base along with some blackstrap molasses and, just the basic stuff, try to keep it basic. A little bit of mycorrhizae in there throughout the process and just to keep it going.
So I assume you're following the general hydroponics feeding chart. Are you doing the full dose according to what it says on the chart? Are you doing a half dose or what?
In all honesty, I couldn't tell you what it says. I know I just use the 5 milliliters, of every single one that I use. I throw it together. I do it all together, so I call it I think we call it the swamp juice, if I'm not mistaken, me and my buddy. But, yeah, just mix it all together, 5 mLs each. And then it's every other feeding. So pretty much give it the newts one, water it with just some sugar, and then repeat.
Are you doing the same type of ratios for plants that you're growing for flower production, for example, versus a run where you're creating seeds? I know some people, what they'll do is they'll just stay on that veg ratio while they're creating seeds for the entire run, for the whole flowering period. And then they swear that helps with healthier seeds. Just wondering if you did that technique or did you just stick with what the feeding chart says for most flowering parts, where it basically knocks down the nitrogen and increases the phosphorus and potassium.
So yeah, when we switch over to flower, it's pretty much obviously I'm not feeding it the veg newts at that point, which is pretty much high in nitrogen and everything. I switch to the flower base, and that's the major thing that I use. I guess the major difference. That's it. Everything else is pretty much the same. And there will be at some point, I say roughly maybe 6 to 7 weeks, I might up the dosing of the phosphorus, which is pretty much the flower base, instead of from 5 mLs to 10. And then I'd say it's usually about, 2 weeks, about a week and a half. At that point, I'll just switch to pretty much, the water and sugar, and that's pretty much it. I've never really done anything known for that to, I guess, help with any healthier seeds or anything like that. I've always just try to keep it as basic as possible and repeat, and if I do try something, it's always maybe a little bit here, a little bit there, instead of just diving into it knee deep,
Got it. Yeah, I've mostly just been doing when I have a seeded run, a breeding run where I've crossed a male and a female or pollinated a female and it's creating seeds. I have mostly just been following the feeding chart where it does kind of, when you get into the flowering, it's reducing the nitrogen, increasing the phosphorus and potassium. But this run in particular, actually working on F4 generation of Chillet OG, And this run, I am kind of sticking with what it says for week 1 flower, where it kind of knocks back the nitrogen, but not as much as it does later on in flowering. And I'm just sticking with that for the entire flowering stage. And so far, so good. I mean, I've got a couple weeks left here until I harvest. And the true telling will be once I dry and then crumble up the flowers and see what does the seeds look like? Are there any underdeveloped seeds? What's the percentage of developed seeds versus underdeveloped seeds? So on and so forth. So yeah, I'm personally doing a little experimenting there when it comes to the nutrients and how I do my feedings.
So let me ask you something. Do you find when you have a plant that has seeds in it, it takes longer to mature, or does that affect anything for you as far as the development time?
100%. Yeah, I push it further in order to try to get more seeds developed. So like right now, if I was just growing the females and just harvesting the buds, I'd be harvesting them right now, but I'm going to push it additional weeks in order to try to get more seeds out of it. So I am starting to see the fade on the plant, like normal senescence that happens towards the end of the growth cycle. I'm keeping a close eye out for nanners to potentially pop out. Nothing so far. But I push it a couple more weeks in order to try to get more yield of seeds out of it. I think a lot of folks do that, and I think it's a smart way to go about it. Just got to keep an eye on making sure, like, because seeds will drop off the plant, right? So like it continues to grow and calyx open up and then the seeds drop. So if you have a whole bunch of plants in the same grow space, the seeds are dropping, you might get mixed up on what's what. So you don't want to go too long because you're going to have all these seeds all over the floor. But I definitely push it a little bit longer than I normally would with just a female plant that hasn't been pollinated.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious.
Let's get into precision stress techniques. So a lot of people will do things to stress the plant in order to try to get a better result. Do you do any precision stress techniques specifically when breeding or pheno hunting?
So I've done a lot over the years, just trying different techniques, I guess you would say, everything from almost impaling a pencil, into the base of it, where it splits it out and, because it's supposed to create more trichome production and everything else, amongst many of other just different things, that they put out there. I feel like we've all gone through that, but the base that I stick to is topping and LST. I keep it basic. I like to top relatively early to allow, the stems that is created from the topping, to really develop, and, to have a base that can pretty much hold up some heavy flowers, but yeah. And then I also like in regards to the LST, which is, there's so many ways to go about it. And it really just depends on like the growth space and whatnot, in particular, I like to kind of create the branched out effect where, and then it kind of grows up. The more tops, the more yield. I'm definitely a yield guy. I like to get the most out of the harvest.
Understood. And then within the growth space, there are different environment conditions that you can aim for. Temperature, relative humidity. Some people supplement CO2. Can you talk to us about what environment conditions that you aim for when breeding?
So when breeding, I would treat it just as any other flowering portion of the grow time. I like to keep it, in between the spectrum of like 55, 60 right there. I feel like that's the sweet spot for me, at least. And then as far as temperature, I in between 60 and 70 is kind of peak, I'm one that I'm a fan of the purple color, and so I always just like to see what the plant does in the cooler temperatures. It's always pretty interesting.
Got it. So pretty straightforward there. Now, when breeding, there are so many different expressions that you can see amongst the plants. Mutations happen every now and then, right? Have you come across any mutations when breeding?
What would you refer to as a mutation?
Anything from like duck's foot or there's a long list of ones, albino plants, anything like that, any funky growth that you've seen. Could be twisted leaves, anything like that at all, or no?
I can't say so much mutations like that. The only thing I would reference to, I guess, would be close to a mutation is a plant that grows like it's been topped, just by itself. It doesn't stick to the normal, I guess, Christmas tree, type look. It's very branchy, almost like if you were to flip a grape, like a vine of grapes pretty much upside down, and how that would look. It does something along those very, very weird, but yeah, that would be the closest to a mutation I would say I've seen.
Yeah, I call that self-topping, how it's like it just kind of splits off into two different directions without you even doing the topping, right?
Yeah, and I feel some of that is induced with the LST method when you kind of expose the lower branches where they normally wouldn't get, I guess they wouldn't normally develop as they would, if you just let it do what it would do by itself. So some of it may be, my own doing, I guess, to some extent. But like I said, some of them, I have seen some plants that just grow like that. Yeah, one in particular, I want to say it is might be from Herbie seeds, if I'm not mistaken. It's the apple betties and the runts punch. I want to say I seen that's at least what I experienced from it. It was interesting.
Cool. I had to pull up the list here of potential mutations. We've got polyploid, stringy, Australian bastard, or ABC. There is vine-like. There's creeper phenotype. Duck's foot, I already mentioned. Leaf buds. We have buds actually that are on the petiole, between the petiole and the actual leaf. Albino, which I talked about. Horde phyllotaxy. That's the quick list of mutations. And there's also that double seedling. I don't know if you've ever come across that. I've seen some people come across it where they plant a seed and then two sprout out. I thought that was pretty cool.
I can't say that I've experienced that, but the bud in between the leaves, that sounds interesting. Like, I think that would just be cool to see. I don't know.
Yeah. I actually haven't come across that yet, but I'm waiting. I wonder what the odds are to come across that. Maybe, I don't know, 1 in 10,000 or something. I don't even know what that would be. If anybody knows, comment below.
Man, please let me know. Hey, and take a picture. Take a picture.
So there are many challenges that you could come across when breeding. What are some common challenges that you face?
Time, knowledge. When I started, it was a very, I guess, primitive concept of just growing in general, let alone breeding, given the information that was available to me versus, where we're at now, is so readily available. I'm kind of jealous of all the new growers getting into the game. They just got all this. It's just there for them, But yeah, but as far as, so a lot of it is just, knowledge and everything. So those are some of my own personal obstacles. Not making the most of each grow, and that just kind of falls into the knowledge, right? Not knowing up until I'd say about 3-4 years ago, just pheno hunting, right? That's when it finally dawned on me. And I was like, whoa, so that means what I found to be underwhelming, the 1 or 2 seeds that I grew out of the batch, and was like, this is all right. I could have had something amazing in that batch, because now knowing like, okay, a F1 versus a F3, man. And also too, when you're implementing certain genetics, even with just the seed banks, I'm seeing some now put this in like the listings, but actually putting F1, F2, F3, which I really love, just the transparency, because that could help with making a decision, just with I guess limiting the variables of what you may get, especially when you're seeking a particular like trait from what they're putting in the description of that particular strain. So man, it's so many. I could ramble on all day for as far as obstacles that you may come across as breeding, because it's been a long one.
Yeah, it's crazy how many different phenotypes you can find within a batch of seeds, how many different expressions you can find. And I think the pheno hunting part is real fun. And you mentioned kind of knowledge as being a challenge that you face. I think with breeding in particular, there's so much to know. And sure, there's some information on the internet, right? You can just do Google searches and learn how to do breeding there and learn the different terms and different ways to go about it and stuff like that. But it might be valuable to purchase a book There are many books out there. I just bought the one by James Loud. He has one on breeding, and that's been my go-to as of right now. Anything because he just released it, I think this year, maybe 2024, or maybe he released it in 2023. But I just got my hands on it this year. Very detailed book, and you can just easily get to it. And I could just go over to my bookshelf there, pick it out, and then go back to the index if I'm looking for something in particular, or look by chapter. And learn so much. I really recommend folks dig into some of these books that are out there because, again, sure, you can go ahead and do Google searches on the internet, but unfortunately, there's a lot of mixed information, misinformation. It can be a little bit tougher to navigate, in my opinion. So, yeah, I could totally see how the knowledge can be a barrier, and I'm glad you brought that one up.
Oh, yeah.
Now, how about common misconceptions about breeding? What are some things that you feel like people say is one thing, but is actually a misconception?
Oh, wow. Man, that kind of falls into the knowledge portion of it, which, I mean, hey, one of the things that it was a misconception for me was, hey, you take this OG and mix it with this sherb over here, and the first, one you try is going to be amazing because you had two amazing plants, and it's still a journey from there, So that right there, I'd say one for sure. And wow, what may grow good in your environment may not be suitable for someone else's. The region that you're in, it may be more humidity or lack thereof. So while this plant may thrive with the cooler temperatures at night, and some plants is not gonna happen. I've had some while just testing out genetics and whatnot. Some thrive, in the cool, like the colder temperatures, and it just did some cool things, with the colors and whatnot, right? But then others, the the harvest, or I guess if I could even call a harvest, it was underdeveloped flower and everything else that you were dealing with. So, yeah,
those are some good ones. Let's talk about the future of breeding. What trends do you see in the future? And how might advances in genetics and technology shape the next generation of strains?
Oh, man. I say, first of all, is definitely the transparency and the things that's just out there right now. Is going to help with everything, people that are aspiring, that aspiring breeders and may have like a goal in mind that they want to do. I think that's huge. But as far as on the technology level, which I'd have to imagine they're already doing some of these things. I mean, I've never worn a lab coat, or whatnot, but I know, just from seeing how they cross the plants and just the vegetables that we have every day, and really being able to hone in and just manipulate things like, I'd have to say like maybe to the point with CRISPR, if you're familiar with that, like some of that technology. I mean, if they're, able to hone in on certain genes, within us. I mean, obviously they could do it with the plants. I know they can. And if you have precision technology like that, you could do some amazing things. I mean, I'd have to say the future is really, it's kind of endless, or the possibility.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of changes in the future for breeding. I mean, tissue culture, that's becoming more and more popular. It's becoming more and more accessible to the home growers. I know Athena put out that tissue culture kit. I haven't had a chance to try it myself, but it seems like it makes things a lot more easier for small home growers, individuals to do tissue culture. And I foresee people using that to kind of store genetics. I think also testing will kind of get a lot better in the future, being able to test for resistance, for pathogens, diseases, so on and so forth. I think that's going to be big in the future. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine. The whole CRISPR thing is nuts. I've seen a few documentaries on it and seeing what they're doing with like humans, and how there was somebody in China who did it for a birth or something like that. And I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild to see what the future is like for that and how that translates over to the plant side of things.
Yeah, I think they reference to them as designer babies, so I'm sure they got designer plants for sure, it's going down. I mean, yeah, it's really interesting. I think some of the things that you touched on, I know just the technology, I think being readily available to the home grower. right? Just to the average consumer, you would say. I think that that's huge. I know some of the testing that they have, like with being able to determine whether it's male or female. I know some things like that, available. Personally, I've never, used it, but because at this point, I'm kind of stuck in the stone age with some of the things. I'm like, I'm gonna just stick to what I know and whatnot, But yeah, that's that's huge. I mean, accessibility is everything.
DNA sex testing is what you're talking about. I actually just sent out a bunch of samples the other day, and I'm waiting to hear back. That service is awesome. A little bit off topic here, but that's really helpful.
How long does that take?
Once they receive the samples, you're able to, they flip it, and within a day or so, they give you the result. And then, so like I have seedlings that just popped.
Mm-hmm.
I went ahead and snipped off the cotyledon leaf of each one, sent those in, and now I should be able to identify what the males are and kill them off before I hit day 14 of sprout. And so like that helps out a ton because I'm not wasting time transplanting, nutrients, watering, all that space. All that stuff is saved because I'm able to kill off my males here in about a week. Actually, in a couple days. Wouldn't be surprised if I got it back on a Friday. We're on Wednesday here, and I shipped it out on Monday. So yeah, I should hopefully get a result back, and then that helps. And it actually does relate to the whole breeding side of things because that's a tool that you can use in order to kind of speed things up a little bit, right? So you're not just if you're not looking for males, or if you just want to segregate your males, you want to identify what your males and females are, and you can put them in different spaces. Yeah, I guess it actually does relate to what we're talking about here. But yeah, really good service. I do use it often.
That's something I'm gonna have to tap into for sure. Because while I've more so kind of transitioned into the pheno hunting and just locking in, on this latest cross of mine, that's definitely something in the future that will definitely speed up the process. Because like you say, it's a lot of resources lost, with the energy and everything else, all the lights. And even though they've, I think the energy bill is, they've condensed on that, and helped out with the savings a little bit with the LED and everything. But because, man, I started off with the metal halide and what is it, HPL, the
HPS.
Yes, yeah, HPS. Thank you. It's been, honestly, it's really just been collecting dust, at this point, since I transitioned to LED. It's like I can't go back. While it helped out a lot on the heating aspect of things, if you didn't have a heater in the space and you had some cooler temperatures, I just buy a mini heater at this point. I think it eats up more energy than anything.
So we have a lot of beginners that tune into this podcast. Really, this podcast is for all experience levels, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and the guests are also on all experience levels. But we do have a lot of folks that are tuning in right now that are beginners, and they're just getting started breeding. What advice do you have for them?
Watch Garden Talk.
Just continue to tune into this podcast, and you'll learn everything. Just kidding.
That's it. And, hey, grab a book. Obviously, do your research. Cross-reference. But really study before just diving into it. Save yourself. A couple of steps. That I could have saved. I guess. Because I remember, I think I killed my first two times around, or I don't know if I could say that. We're talking about plants, but but hey, my first two attempts did not last. So really just study. Understand it, what it is that you're doing with this and what it takes, and because everything is is different. They're not all the same. You got some that So study the strain. Because oftentimes you can't just take a one size fit all approach,
Definitely some good advice there. So let's wrap things up here. Can you tell the listeners how they can find you and what you have upcoming in the future?
Man, what's upcoming in the future? Everything and everything. You can find me at Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or just go directly to anothervisionproductions.com. You can find me there. And hey, definitely in a lot of spaces, but just search up Skit P, Another Vision Productions, and hey, you'll find me and the rest of the crew.
I'll definitely have a link to your Instagram down in the YouTube description section below, so folks that are tuning in on YouTube can click on the description section and click your link right away. So go ahead and give him a follow if you are looking to follow his breeding journey. And then also follow up on his movies and productions that he's doing. That movie I was in, I think a lot of people will like it. It's a stoner comedy, really. And that's the audience here. So
I did it for the people. I did it for the people.
Yeah. Also, big thanks to the folks that are supporting on Patreon. 100% of the money that supported through Patreon goes right back into the podcast. Everything from paying for the editor, paying for the podcast platform, all of that stuff is covered through your support on Patreon. So thank you so much. Patreon.com/Mr. Grow It. On the screen right now, big thanks to the folks in the producer tier. Appreciate you. Well, Skit P, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast today. I appreciate you chopping it up and kind of breaking it down for us, kind of how you go about breeding and how you do the grow and so on and so forth. So thanks so much and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Oh, man, right back at you. I appreciate you having me. Appreciate you taking the time. And, man, it's all love, man. Hey, hopefully we could work in the future.
Peace out, everyone. Catch you in the next episode.